As I stared into the mirror, a sinister smile formed on the man's face behind me, sending a chill down my spine and making me question my own sanity. I decided to book an Airbnb in an isolated cabin in the mountains to find some time for rest and reflection. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, with a large fireplace and an amazing view of the surrounding nature. The idea of a weekend away from the hustle and bustle of city life seemed perfect for recharging my spirit and clearing my mind. The first night in the cabin was supposed to be peaceful, offering a much-needed escape from my hectic life. I spent the evening enjoying a quiet dinner and reading a book by the fireplace. The serene environment and the gentle crackling of the fire made me feel relaxed and at ease, a welcome change from the constant stress of work. Little did I know, the tranquility was about to be shattered. While getting ready for bed, I noticed something strange in the bedroom mirror. A man standing behind me, looking directly at me. At first, I thought it might be a trick of the light or my tired eyes playing tricks on me. I turned around quickly, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, the man was still there, his eyes locked onto mine with a sinister smile curling his lips. Fear gripped me as I realized the reflection was independent of reality, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The man in the mirror had a presence that was both malevolent and unnervingly calm. His eyes seemed to bore into my soul, and the smile on his face grew wider, as if he knew the fear he was instilling in me. I backed away from the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. The longer I stared, the more real he seemed. His features were sharp and distinct, not at all like a figment of my imagination. The room around me felt colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen. The man's eyes never left mine, and his smile seemed to mock my fear. I could almost hear the echoes of his silent laughter reverberating in my mind. Feeling unnerved, I covered the mirror with a sheet and tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. The fear, however, lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I lay in bed, attempting to sleep, but the feeling of being watched persisted, making it impossible to relax. The once cozy cabin now felt oppressive, and every creak of the old wood seemed amplified in the silence. I could feel the weight of the man's gaze through the sheet covering the mirror. It was as if his presence permeated the very air in the room, making it thick and heavy. I tossed and turned, trying to shake the unsettling feeling, but the fear only grew stronger. My mind raced with thoughts of what I had seen, and I couldn't shake the image of his sinister smile. The cabin, once a refuge of peace, now felt like a prison. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, and the flickering light from the fireplace cast eerie shapes on the walls. I closed my eyes tightly, hoping to block out the terror, but the man's image was burned into my mind. Sleep was a distant hope as the night dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. During the night, I heard whispers and low laughter coming from the room, growing louder and more insistent. Each sound seemed to come from all around me, making it difficult to pinpoint its origin and increasing my sense of dread. The whispers seemed to be calling my name, and the laughter was filled with a mocking, sinister tone. I pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the noise, but it only seemed to grow louder. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I could almost feel the man's presence in the room with me. My heart raced, and I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or call out for help. The darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with its weight. The whispers were relentless, and the laughter sent shivers down my spine. It was as if the man in the mirror had somehow crossed into my reality, tormenting me with his presence. I prayed for the night to end, for the first light of dawn to chase away the shadows and the fear. But as the hours dragged on, I was left in a state of terror, trapped in the cabin with the malevolent presence. The next morning, with the first light of dawn, I gathered enough courage to remove the sheet from the mirror. My hands trembled as I reached out, the memory of the man's sinister smile still fresh in my mind. Slowly, I pulled the sheet away, bracing myself for what I might see. To my relief and confusion, the mirror was clear, with no strange presence reflected in it. The absence of the sinister figure did little to alleviate my fear. I scrutinized my own reflection, half expecting the man to reappear at any moment. The daylight brought a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of his eyes and smile lingered, casting a shadow over my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching, waiting for the right moment to return. Determined to put the experience behind me, I tried to go about my day as normally as possible. I made breakfast, took a walk outside, and tried to enjoy the beauty of the surroundings. Yet, every reflective surface seemed to hold a potential threat. The fear was deeply ingrained, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder constantly, haunted by the night's events. Deciding that I couldn't stay in the cabin any longer, I packed my bags and prepared to leave. The isolation that once seemed so inviting now felt like a trap. As I drove away, the tension in my chest began to ease, but the unease remained. I knew I had to inform the Airbnb host about what had happened, even if it sounded unbelievable. Upon returning to civilization, I called the Airbnb host and recounted my harrowing experience. I described the man in the mirror, the whispers, and the sinister laughter. The host listened in stunned silence, their shock and concern evident. They apologized profusely and promised to investigate, but their reaction only added to my unease. The host's bewilderment mirrored my own, and their disbelief made me question my sanity. Could it have all been a hallucination brought on by stress and fatigue? Despite their reassurances, I felt no comfort. The encounter was too vivid, too real, to dismiss as mere imagination. A few days later, the host called me back with a startling revelation. They explained that the mirror had been removed from the cabin years ago due to previous reports of similar apparitions. They were baffled as to how it had returned and assured me that no one else had access to the cabin during my stay. This revelation sent a fresh wave of fear through me. The host's apology was sincere, but their explanation left more questions than answers. The mirror's reappearance seemed impossible, yet it had happened. The idea that the cabin harbored a malevolent presence made my blood run cold. The host promised to remove the mirror again and offered me a full refund, but it was small comfort in the face of such an eerie mystery. The knowledge that others had experienced similar hauntings did little to alleviate my fear. If anything, it confirmed that something sinister was at play. The host's words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder how many others had been tormented by the man in the mirror. The realization that I was not alone in my terror was both a comfort and a curse. Since that night, I have avoided renting isolated places and always check the mirrors in any new location I stay in. The fear of encountering another apparition has stayed with me, making it difficult to find peace during vacations or retreats. The memory of the man in the mirror, with his sinister smile and piercing eyes, haunts me, a constant reminder of the thin veil between the ordinary and the supernatural. Every reflective surface became a potential doorway to another encounter. The fear had left a mark on me, a lingering sense of vulnerability and caution. I shared my story with friends and family, warning them to be careful of what they might see in mirrors. The sinister presence I encountered was not something to be taken lightly. The experience changed me in profound ways. What was once a sense of adventure and curiosity was now tinged with fear and suspicion. I found myself looking for hidden threats in every corner, always on edge. The man in the mirror had left an indelible mark on my psyche, turning the mundane act of looking in a mirror into a moment fraught with anxiety. The memory of the man in the mirror haunts me, a reminder of the thin veil between the ordinary and the supernatural. I share my story with others as a cautionary tale, warning them to be mindful of what they might see in reflective surfaces. The sinister smile of the man in the mirror remains etched in my mind, a constant reminder of the terror I faced in that isolated cabin. The experience has left me more cautious and wary of the unknown. I no longer take the safety of familiar surroundings for granted, always aware that something sinister could be lurking just out of sight. The fear has become a part of me, shaping my actions and decisions. The man in the mirror was not just a figment of my imagination. He was a harbinger of the unknown horrors that lie hidden in the most unexpected places. As time passes, the fear does not diminish but transforms into a vigilant caution. I remain ever alert, knowing that the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than we like to believe. The story of the man in the mirror serves as a grim reminder that some encounters leave a permanent scar, altering the way we perceive the world around us. The sinister smile and piercing eyes of the man in the mirror are a constant companion, a testament to the night when the ordinary became terrifyingly extraordinary. Stay in your seat. The next horror story is just about to begin. Make sure to subscribe and share your scariest moment in the comments. Story 2. As I opened the hidden door behind the bookshelf, the sight of a room filled with old dolls all staring at me sent chills down my spine, and then I heard the soft giggle of a child echoing in the empty room. I had been feeling overwhelmed with work and decided to take a quiet weekend alone to recharge. I found an Airbnb in a small town that seemed perfect for some much-needed solitude. The house was old but charming, with a cozy atmosphere that promised comfort and relaxation. The first night in the house was peaceful at first. I settled in, enjoyed a quiet dinner, and read a book by the fireplace. The old house had its quirks, but it felt like a perfect retreat from the hustle and bustle of city life. As the night wore on, I began to hear strange noises coming from upstairs. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, but the sounds persisted and grew more unsettling. It was a series of soft thumps and creaks, almost like footsteps, but too faint to be certain. I tried to ignore the noises and convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the sounds continued, my unease grew. The persistent noises felt like a deliberate intrusion into the silence of the night. Finally, curiosity and a sense of foreboding compelled me to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way upstairs, my heart pounding with each step. The hallway was dimly lit, and the sound seemed to be coming from behind one of the walls. In my search for the source of the noises, I noticed an old bookshelf in the hallway that seemed slightly out of place. Something about it drew my attention, and I instinctively reached out to move it. To my surprise, the bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden door behind it. A mix of curiosity and apprehension filled me as I stared at the door. What could be behind it? I hesitated for a moment, but then I decided to open it, driven by a need to uncover the mystery. The door creaked open slowly, and a musty smell greeted me. As I peered inside, I felt an eerie sensation wash over me. The hidden door had revealed a secret room that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. My heart raced as I stepped inside, my flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. The room was filled with old dolls, each one positioned as if it were looking directly at the door. Their glassy eyes seemed to follow my every move, and their faces were frozen in eerie expressions. The sight was both unsettling and disturbing, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The atmosphere in the room was thick with an overpowering sense of being watched. It felt as if the dolls were silently observing me, waiting for something. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I walked further into the room, my flashlight revealing more dolls in various states of decay. The sight was surreal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The sense of unease grew stronger, and I felt an almost irresistible urge to leave. The heavy silence was suddenly broken by a soft giggle, like that of a child. It echoed eerily in the confined space, sending a jolt of fear through me. I spun around, flashlight beam darting across the room, but there was no one there. The giggle came again, closer this time, as if it was right beside me. My heart pounded as I frantically searched the room, but all I saw were the lifeless dolls, their eyes seeming to mock my terror. The air grew colder, and I felt a chill that went beyond the physical, seeping into my very bones. I could almost feel a presence, unseen but undeniably there, watching me with malevolent curiosity. Panic surged through me, and I backed away towards the door. The giggle grew louder, more insistent, and I could swear I felt a cold breath on my neck. My hands shook as I fumbled for the doorknob, desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere and the unseen watcher. With a final, desperate effort, I wrenched the door open and stumbled back into the hallway. I slammed the door shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The safety of the hallway was a fragile comfort. I could still feel the lingering presence of the room and its unsettling occupants. I ran back to my room, locking the door behind me. Every creak and groan of the old house set my nerves on edge. I sat on the bed, clutching the flashlight, my eyes darting around the room as if expecting the dolls to burst through the door at any moment. Sleep was impossible. I stayed awake all night, my mind replaying the horrifying experience over and over. When the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, I felt a small measure of relief. The night was over, but the fear remained. I packed my things quickly, eager to leave the house and its haunting secrets behind. As I walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I drove away from the Airbnb as fast as I could, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The quaint charm of the small town had lost its appeal, overshadowed by the terror of the previous night. The sense of relief grew as I put more distance between myself and the house, but the fear still lingered in the back of my mind. Once I reached a nearby diner, I stopped to catch my breath and collect my thoughts. Over a cup of coffee, I debated whether to tell the owner about what I had found. The memory of the secret room and the chilling giggle was still vivid, but I knew I had to share my experience, if only to warn others. I called the Airbnb owner and explained everything. The hidden door, the dolls, the giggle. It all spilled out in a rush. To my dismay, the owner seemed confused and skeptical. He insisted that there was no such room in the house and suggested I might have been dreaming or imagining things. His dismissal only added to my frustration and fear. The owner's denial left me feeling unsettled and doubting my own sanity. How could he not know about the room? The evidence had been so tangible, the fear so real. I replayed the events in my mind, trying to find some explanation that made sense, but nothing did. The owner's insistence that there was no hidden room made me question everything I had experienced. I shared the story with a few friends, hoping for some validation. They listened with wide eyes and offered their own theories. Some thought it might be a prank, while others suggested more supernatural explanations. But no matter the theory, the fear I had felt was undeniable, and it left a deep impression on me. The lack of answers and the owner's refusal to acknowledge the room's existence added to the mystery and horror of the experience. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden, something dark and sinister that lurked behind that secret door. The experience changed the way I viewed seemingly charming, old houses and the unknown dangers they might hide. I became more cautious, always double-checking details and reviews before renting another Airbnb. The memory of the secret room and the child's giggle haunted me, a constant reminder of the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. Every time I stayed somewhere new, I found myself looking for hidden doors and listening for unexplained noises. The fear had left a mark on me, a lingering sense of vulnerability and caution. The secret room became a cautionary tale I shared with others, warning them of the potential horrors hidden in plain sight. The encounter at the Airbnb was a turning point, a moment when the comfort of the familiar was shattered by the intrusion of the unknown. The fear and unease remained, a shadow that followed me, reminding me that some mysteries are best left undiscovered and some doors best left unopened. Feeling scared yet? Hold on tight. The next horror awaits. Hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. Story 3. Every night, I woke up in a cold sweat, feeling an invisible presence watching me from the shadows of the unfamiliar house. On a business trip, I booked an Airbnb near the conference site, eager for a convenient and comfortable stay. The house was modern and well decorated, seemingly perfect for a busy professional like me. It had all the amenities I needed, and the photos online made it look like an ideal place to unwind after long days at the conference. The first night in the house was supposed to be peaceful, offering a much-needed escape from my hectic life. I spent the evening settling in, enjoying a quiet dinner and preparing for the week ahead. However, as I lay down to sleep, an uneasy feeling began to creep over me, foreshadowing the terror that was to come. That first night, I fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's travel. But my rest was anything but peaceful. I was plagued by horrible nightmares of unknown people standing around my bed, watching me as I slept. Their faces were shrouded in darkness, and their eyes seemed to bore into my soul, leaving me paralyzed with fear. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, and immediately felt the suffocating sensation of being watched. The room was dark and silent, but the sense of an unseen presence was undeniable. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement, but all I saw were shadows cast by the moonlight filtering through the curtains. I got up and checked every corner of the room, even looking under the bed and in the closet, but found nothing. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was there with me. The rest of the night was spent in restless anticipation, waiting for the next nightmare to begin. The next few nights were no better. Each night, the nightmares grew more vivid and terrifying, and I would wake up at the same time, drenched in sweat and filled with dread. The figures in my dreams became more distinct, their features more grotesque, and their presence more menacing. The feeling of being watched became stronger and more oppressive. I started noticing cold spots in the room and occasionally heard faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The once cozy and inviting house now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on me as the nights grew darker and more foreboding. My work began to suffer as the lack of sleep and constant fear took their toll. I confided in a few colleagues, but they dismissed my experiences as stress-induced hallucinations. Their skepticism only added to my sense of isolation and helplessness, making me question my own sanity. Desperate for answers, I decided to talk to the neighbors about the house. Their responses were unsettling. They seemed hesitant to discuss the house's past. One evening, an elderly woman living next door finally opened up, her voice trembling as she recounted the house's dark history. She revealed that the former owner had mysteriously disappeared without a trace, and their body was never found. The police investigation had turned up no leads, and the case remained unsolved. Rumors circulated that the house was cursed or haunted by the spirits of those who had vanished. Armed with this disturbing information, I realized I couldn't stay in the house any longer. The nightmares, the feeling of being watched, and the house's dark history were too much to bear. I decided to leave immediately, hoping to escape the malevolent presence that seemed to haunt my every step. On what would be my last night in the house, the nightmares reached a terrifying peak. The unknown figures in my dreams became more aggressive, closing in on me with sinister intent. Their whispers turned into malevolent chants, echoing in my ears and making it impossible to distinguish dream from reality. The air grew colder, and a thick, suffocating darkness enveloped me. I woke up to find my room colder than ever, and the sense of an unseen presence was overwhelming. I could hear faint footsteps approaching my bed, accompanied by the same whispering voices from my nightmares. Paralyzed with fear, I lay there, hoping it was just another bad dream. But the footsteps grew louder, and I felt a cold hand brush against my arm. That was the breaking point. I bolted out of bed and grabbed my belongings. The fear and adrenaline coursing through me were enough to propel me out of the house without a second thought. I knew I couldn't spend another minute in that cursed place, and I resolved to leave as soon as possible. In a state of sheer panic, I threw my belongings into my suitcase and rushed out of the house. The sense of relief I felt upon stepping outside was immense, but the fear lingered. My heart was still racing, and my hands shook as I fumbled with my car keys. The night was dark and quiet, but the memory of the chilling presence inside the house stayed with me. I drove to the nearest hotel, where I finally felt somewhat safe. exhausted and shaken. I checked into a room and tried to calm my racing heart. The hotel's sterile, impersonal atmosphere was a welcome contrast to the malevolent energy of the Airbnb. Despite the physical distance I had put between myself and the house, the fear had followed me. Despite the hotel's comfort, I couldn't sleep. Every creak and shadow made me jump, the fear from the house still gripping me tightly. I spent the night wide awake, replaying the events in my mind and trying to make sense of the terror I had experienced. The thought of returning to the house was unimaginable, and I knew I had to report the incident. The next morning, I contacted the Airbnb host to report the incident. I explained the nightmares, the feeling of being watched, and the house's dark history as told by the neighbors. The host listened in stunned silence, their shock and concern evident. They apologized profusely and promised to investigate, but their reaction only added to my unease. The host seemed genuinely shocked and reassured me that they had never received such complaints before. They promised to look into the matter and offered me a full refund for my stay. While their response was comforting in some ways, it did little to erase the trauma of my experience. I felt a mix of relief and frustration, knowing that my account might be dismissed as mere imagination. The host's bewilderment mirrored my own, and their disbelief made me question my sanity. Could it have all been a hallucination brought on by stress and fatigue? Despite their reassurances, I felt no comfort. The encounter was too vivid, too real, to dismiss as mere imagination. The sinister presence in that house was something I would never forget. I decided to cut my business trip short and return home. The experience had left me deeply shaken, and I needed the comfort of familiar surroundings. The drive home was a blur, my mind preoccupied with the haunting events of the past few nights. Back home, I found it difficult to resume my normal routine. The nightmares continued sporadically, and the feeling of being watched haunted me in my own home. I sought help from a therapist who suggested that the experience had triggered a deep-seated fear. Despite their reassurance, the memory of the house and its eerie presence remained vivid. I found myself avoiding mirrors and dark corners, fearing that the malevolent presence might follow me home. My sleep was restless, and the sense of dread lingered. Friends and family were supportive, but their attempts to rationalize the events did little to comfort me. The fear had become a part of me, a constant reminder of the thin veil between the ordinary and the supernatural. The house had left an indelible mark on my psyche, turning the mundane act of sleeping into a moment fraught with anxiety and fear. Since that incident, I have become much more cautious when choosing places to stay. I thoroughly research each location, looking for any hints of a dark past or unsettling reviews. The fear of encountering another haunted house has made me wary and suspicious, but it has also made me more aware of the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. The memory of the man in the mirror haunts me, a reminder of the unknown terrors that can lurk in the most ordinary places. The experience changed me in profound ways. What was once a sense of adventure and curiosity was now tinged with fear and suspicion. I found myself looking for hidden threats in every corner, always on edge. As time passes, the fear does not diminish but transforms into a vigilant caution. I remain ever alert, knowing that the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than we like to believe. The nightmare house remains a chilling memory, a reminder of the unknown horrors that lie hidden in the most unexpected places. It serves as a cautionary tale I share with others, warning them to trust their instincts and be vigilant of the unseen. Story 4. As I cautiously opened the slightly ajar door, the sight of scratch marks on the walls and floor sent chills down my spine, making me realize something, or someone, had been desperately trying to get out. On a business trip, I booked an Airbnb in a historic town famous for its well-preserved old buildings, eager to immerse myself in its charm and history. The house I stayed in was a perfect blend of charm and antiquity, filled with antique furniture and a cozy atmosphere. It had all the makings of a peaceful retreat after long days of meetings. The first day, I took a leisurely stroll through the town, admiring the architecture and soaking in the atmosphere. When I returned to the house, I noticed one of the rooms was locked. Assuming it was a storage room for the owner, I thought nothing of it. Little did I know, this room would become the focal point of my terrifying experience. On the first night, I settled into the cozy ambience of the house, enjoying the antique decor and peaceful surroundings. As the night deepened, I started hearing faint noises coming from the direction of the locked room. At first, the sounds were subtle, like soft whispers and distant footsteps, making me question if it was just my imagination. I tried to brush it off, attributing the noises to the old house settling or the wind outside. However, as the hours passed, the noises grew more distinct and unsettling. Furniture being dragged and intermittent thuds echoed through the hallway, making it impossible to ignore. Sleep was elusive, and a sense of dread began to take root as I lay in bed, wide awake and on edge. Despite my growing unease, I convinced myself it was nothing to worry about and eventually drifted into a restless sleep. The next day, I went about my business, trying to push the strange occurrences from my mind. But as night fell again, my anxiety resurfaced, knowing I would soon be back in the house. On the second night, the disturbances escalated. The noises from the locked room became louder and more persistent, filling me with an overwhelming sense of unease. The sounds of furniture being dragged and heavy footsteps were unmistakable, echoing through the house with an eerie resonance. Despite my fear, curiosity gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I spent the night wide awake, listening to the eerie sounds and trying to muster the courage to investigate. The hours dragged on, and my anxiety reached its peak. The noises seemed almost frantic, as if whatever was inside the locked room was growing more desperate. As dawn approached, I resolved to check the room in the morning, hoping daylight would bring clarity. The anticipation of what I might find kept me on edge. Every creak and groan of the old house made me jump, and the oppressive silence in between the noises only heightened my anxiety. When morning finally arrived, I knew I had to confront whatever was behind that door. With the first light of morning, I gathered my courage and approached the locked room. To my shock, the door was slightly ajar, its lock hanging loosely as if it had been forced open from the inside. I hesitated, a cold sweat forming on my brow, but curiosity and a need for answers pushed me forward. As I entered the room, a musty smell greeted me, and the sight that met my eyes was nothing short of horrifying. The room was empty, but the walls and floor were covered in deep scratch marks, as if someone, or something, had been trying to claw its way out. The air was thick with a sense of lingering dread, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind racing with questions. What had caused these marks? How had the door been opened? The eerie atmosphere and the physical evidence of a struggle made it clear that something sinister had happened in that room. I knew I had to find out more, but the fear of what I might uncover was almost paralyzing. Determined to get answers, I contacted the Airbnb owner and asked about the locked room. His reaction was unsettling. He seemed uncomfortable and evasive, avoiding direct answers to my questions. When I mentioned the scratch marks and the noises, he dismissed them as figments of my imagination, or perhaps the result of a rodent problem. He insisted that the room was always locked and no one was supposed to enter it. His discomfort only added to my growing fear, and I pressed him for more information about the house's history. The owner abruptly changed the subject, offering no further explanation and suggesting that I enjoy the rest of my stay. His behavior deepened my suspicion and unease, leaving me with more questions than answers. The conversation ended with an uneasy silence. I could tell he was hiding something, but I couldn't force the truth out of him. His refusal to acknowledge the strange occurrences only made me more determined to uncover the secrets of the locked room. My fear was now mingled with frustration and a burning curiosity that wouldn't let me rest. Despite the fear gnawing at me, I decided to stay one more night, hoping to gather more information. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house held secrets that needed to be uncovered. As night fell, the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly oppressive. The noises from the locked room returned, louder and more menacing than before. The air was thick with tension, and I felt a constant sense of being watched. I tried to distract myself with television and reading, but the sounds were relentless, invading my thoughts and making it impossible to concentrate. The creaking floorboards, the dragging furniture, and the eerie whispers filled the house with an almost tangible sense of dread. I kept glancing at the clock, willing the night to pass quickly, but time seemed to crawl. Sleep was impossible, and I spent the night in a state of hyper-awareness, every creak and whisper sending chills down my spine. The terror was palpable, and I questioned my decision to stay. By the time dawn broke, I was exhausted, both mentally and physically. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't help feeling that I was leaving behind a mystery unsolved. On the last night, the disturbances reached a terrifying crescendo. The noises from the locked room were relentless, and the sense of dread was overwhelming. It felt as though the house itself was closing in on me. The sounds of scratching and banging on the door echoed through the house, each thud reverberating through my bones. I felt as though whatever was inside the locked room was trying to break free. In a moment of sheer panic, I barricaded myself in my room, hoping to keep whatever was inside the locked room at bay. I pushed furniture against the door and sat on the bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The sounds of scratching and banging continued, each noise heightening my fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming for me. As the night wore on, I realized I couldn't stay any longer. The fear was too intense, and I knew I had to leave. I gathered my belongings, ready to flee as soon as the sun rose. The hours dragged on, and I counted down the minutes until daylight, my eyes never leaving the barricaded door. When dawn finally arrived, I felt a surge of relief, but the terror of the night still clung to me. At the first light of dawn, I left the house in a hurry, my heart pounding with fear and relief. The sense of escaping a living nightmare was overwhelming, and I couldn't get away fast enough. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching me, its secrets still hidden behind those locked doors. The memory of the scratch marks and the unsettling noises haunted me, playing over and over in my mind. I contacted the owner one last time, informing him of my departure and reiterating my concerns about the room. His response was brief and dismissive, reinforcing my decision to never return. The sense of danger and unease that had permeated the house was something I never wanted to experience again. I felt a mix of relief and lingering dread, knowing that I had escaped but unsure of what I had left behind. The drive home was a blur, my mind preoccupied with the haunting events of the past few nights. Back home, I found it difficult to resume my normal routine. The nightmares continued sporadically, and the feeling of being watched haunted me in my own home. I sought comfort in the familiarity of my surroundings, but the fear lingered, a constant reminder of the terror I had experienced. The experience left a lasting impact on me. I became more cautious and selective when choosing places to stay, always researching the history and reviews thoroughly. The fear of encountering another haunted house made me wary and suspicious, but it also made me more aware of the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. I shared my story with friends and family, warning them to be vigilant and trust their instincts. The memory of the locked room and its terrifying secrets stayed with me, a constant reminder of the unseen horrors that can lurk in even the most charming of places. The sense of being watched and the eerie noises became recurring themes in my nightmares, and I often woke up in a cold sweat, reliving the terror of those nights. My sleep was restless, and the sense of dread lingered. As time passed, the fear did not diminish but transformed into a vigilant caution. I remained ever alert, knowing that the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than we like to believe. The locked room remains a chilling memory, a reminder of the unknown horrors that lie hidden in the most unexpected places. It serves as a cautionary tale I share with others, warning them to trust their instincts and be vigilant of the unseen. Story 5. As the shadow moved closer to the window, its human shape became unmistakable, sending chills down my spine as I realized it was watching me. During a vacation trip, I booked an Airbnb in a picturesque house with a beautiful garden, eager to enjoy some peace and relaxation. The house was cozy and inviting, with large windows offering a stunning view of the garden. It seemed like the perfect retreat from the hustle and bustle of daily life. After spending the day exploring the charming town, I returned to the house at dusk, ready to unwind. Little did I know, my peaceful evening would soon be interrupted by an eerie presence lurking in the garden. As I settled into the living room, enjoying the tranquility of the house, I noticed a shadow moving through the garden. At first, I thought it was an animal, perhaps a stray cat or a raccoon, given the rural setting. The shadow moved with an odd fluidity, catching my attention. It seemed to hover and shift, unlike any animal I had seen before. I leaned closer to the window, squinting to make out the shape in the dim light. The shadow took on a human form, standing still and facing the house. A chill ran down my spine as I realized it wasn't an animal but something, or someone, watching me from the garden. I quickly closed the curtains, trying to shake off the unease. I told myself it was probably just a trick of the light or my imagination playing tricks on me. However, the sound of footsteps in the grass outside persisted, growing louder and more deliberate. I paced the living room, debating whether to investigate or call someone for help. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, and my heart pounded in my chest. The footsteps continued, each step heightening my fear. Gathering my courage, I peeked through a small gap in the curtains. The shadow was now closer, standing right in front of the window. It was undeniably human in shape, and I could almost make out the outline of a face. Panic set in as I realized the shadow was not going away. I turned off the lights and stayed quiet, hoping it would leave. The room was plunged into darkness, and I could hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid, as I tried to remain calm. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence of the house. The rustling of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, and the relentless footsteps of the shadow outside. I felt trapped, unsure of what to do or how to make it stop. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps gradually faded away. I waited, tense and alert, for any sign of movement. When I finally dared to look, the shadow was gone, leaving only the dark garden and the lingering sense of dread. The fear was palpable, and I questioned my decision to stay. I spent the rest of the night in a state of hyper-awareness, every creak and whisper sending chills down my spine. The terror was almost tangible, and I knew I couldn't stay in the house any longer. The memory of the shadow and its menacing presence haunted me. As dawn approached, I gathered my belongings, ready to leave at the first light. The fear was too intense, and I knew I had to get away from the house and its eerie garden. The hours dragged on, and I counted down the minutes until daylight, my eyes never leaving the window. At the first light of dawn, I ventured outside to inspect the garden. The fresh air and daylight did little to calm my nerves. As I walked around, I found footprints in the grass, clear and unmistakable, leading to and from the window. The sight of the footprints confirmed my fears. Someone or something had been there, watching me. The footprints were unsettling, leaving a trail that told a story of intrusion and surveillance. I felt violated, my sense of safety shattered by the evidence before me. The eerie atmosphere of the previous night clung to me, making it hard to shake off the fear. The realization that the shadow had been real and not just a figment of my imagination was overwhelming. I quickly packed my things, eager to leave the house and put the unsettling experience behind me. Before leaving, I took photos of the footprints, intending to show them to the Airbnb owner and warn them of the potential danger. The drive away from the house was filled with a mix of relief and lingering dread. Upon returning the keys, I told the owner about the strange events of the previous night. They listened with a concerned expression, but their reaction suggested this was the first time they had heard of such an occurrence. I showed them the photos of the footprints and described the shadow in detail. The owner assured me they would look into it and thanked me for bringing it to their attention. Despite their reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with the house. The owner's calm demeanor did little to alleviate my fears, and I wondered if they were hiding something or simply didn't understand the gravity of the situation. As I drove away, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the shadowy figure following me. The fear and unease stayed with me, making it hard to focus on anything else. The sense of being watched had seeped into my subconscious, affecting my ability to relax and feel safe. Even after leaving the house, the fear and unease stayed with me. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the shadowy figure lurking nearby. The sense of being watched had become a persistent paranoia, and I struggled to shake off the feeling. I became more cautious when booking accommodations, avoiding places with large, isolated gardens, or anything that reminded me of the Airbnb. The memory of the shadow and the relentless footsteps haunted my dreams, turning peaceful sleep into a nightly battle. Sharing my experience with friends and family brought some comfort, but their skeptical reactions only added to my frustration. The incident had left a deep scar, one that would take time to heal. The shadow in the garden remained a haunting mystery, one that I couldn't easily forget. As time passed, the fear did not diminish but transformed into a vigilant caution. I remained ever alert, knowing that the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than we like to believe. Determined to find some closure, I researched the history of the Airbnb and the surrounding area. I discovered that the house had a long and storied past, with rumors of ghostly sightings and unexplained phenomena dating back decades. This revelation only deepened my sense of dread and curiosity. I reached out to local historians and paranormal enthusiasts, hoping to learn more about the shadow in the garden. Their stories varied, but many mentioned a mysterious figure seen wandering the grounds at night, often described as a restless spirit or a guardian of the land. The tales were both fascinating and terrifying, painting a picture of a house steeped in supernatural lore. While the stories provided some context, they did little to quell my fear. The shadow remained an enigma, its true nature and intentions unknown. I realized that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, and perhaps it was better to leave the past where it belonged. The fear, however, lingered, a constant reminder of my encounter with the unknown. The experience left a lasting impact on me. I became more vigilant and aware of my surroundings, always on guard for anything out of the ordinary. The shadow in the garden had changed me, making me more cautious and introspective. I shared my story with others, hoping to warn them of the potential dangers lurking in the most unexpected places. The memory of the shadow served as a cautionary tale, a reminder to trust one's instincts and be prepared for the unknown. The incident had opened my eyes to the thin veil between reality and the supernatural, making me more attuned to the mysteries of the world. As time passed, the fear slowly faded, but the lessons learned remained. The shadow in the garden was a haunting chapter in my life, one that shaped my perspective and left me with a deeper appreciation for the mysteries of the world. It serves as a constant reminder of the unseen horrors that can lurk in the most charming of places. The experience, though terrifying, made me stronger and more resilient, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold.